Okay, everybody, welcome back. We're gonna start our afternoon session. Nope.
Testing, testing. Oops.
Come stand up here. Welcome back. Oh, Lord. Do you still have eardrums? Sorry about that. Apologize. Welcome back. We're ready to start our afternoon session. So we have 3 great sessions planned for you this afternoon. And what I wanted to remind you of, for everybody that's present, be sure to sign in the sign-in sheet. That's how you get your CTE credit. And you have to sign in both the morning and in the afternoon, and then tomorrow morning again as well. Come stand by me so that the online people can hear. And then to our online people, like, y'all know how to do this, so you're going to be ready to acknowledge when you get the prompt of are you listening, and then you know when to take your bio breaks. And we do know that there is a lack of chocolate chip cookies. We apologize for the severe oversight on such an important point. We do have compensating controls. So, and we're gonna work on that, but enjoy the rest of the day.
All right, everyone, welcome back. So happy to see your faces. I hope you are full and ready to learn for the rest of the afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce our next instructor. Tammy Ritchie began her employment with the Louisiana Legislative Auditor in February of 2022 in the Investigative Audit Services section of our office. Prior to joining LLA, she was employed with the Allen Parish School Board for 13 years, where she was the Director of Finance. She also has worked in public accounting for 5 years and taught accounting at a technical college for 3 years. Tammy currently serves as an investigative auditor for the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office. As an investigative auditor, her job is to investigate complaints about the misuse of public funds. She has worked on several audits since she began with the LLA. Tammy recently became a certified fraud examiner. Please welcome Ms. Tammy Ritchie.
Thank you. So, as you heard, I've only been with the Legislative Auditor's Office since February. So the newbies get to go after lunch. So sorry. We're going to try to keep y'all awake. I know that it's really hard after lunch. So before I get started with my slideshow, I just wanted to tell y'all a little bit about how I became in this position that I'm in now. I worked for the school board for 13 years. Probably was planning to stay there a lot longer. Things happen. I knew one day I wanted to do something different. My mom retired from the Legislative Auditor's Office, knew one day that I probably wanted to work for them, but wanted to wait till my daughter got out of college. Well, she doesn't finish till December of next year. But my friend Diane was talking to me one day at a LASBO conference, and before I knew it, I had applied for a position. So on Christmas break, got the call saying that I got the job. Well, you know how crazy January is. We have W-2s, 1099s, 1095s, you name it, we got it. So they were gracious to give me the month of January to start working at the beginning of February. So my problem was, really wasn't planning on leaving yet. Wasn't really prepared. So I didn't really have a lot written down. What did I do? You know, and as y'all all know, we do a lot of different things. We don't do the same thing every day. We don't do the same thing every month. A lot of our things are done annually. You try to remember all that in January. It's hard. So when Diane asked me to do this, I thought, hey, yeah, this is it. This is what I need to tell people. If you get nothing out of anything I say today, get this. You never know when you're walking out that door. Okay? You don't know if it's today, if you don't know if it's 10 years from now. Have a list of what you do and how to do it. I am lucky enough to where I am very, available to help the person who took my place. We have a good relationship. She'll call me, text me, whatever. But I still put her in a bind because I didn't have a good plan in place. I didn't have procedures written out. So that's what this sort of is talking about. We're going to talk about different things we do throughout the year. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is just some things I've just pulled and put down on the slideshow. You need to make your own list. Use this as a jumping start. Add to it. Make it more detailed. But you really need to have a good procedure in place. Not just for you, but for everyone in your department, for everyone in your organization. Because, you know, face it, if you're the ones left behind and someone else leaves, you may not know what they did. And you're the one having to try to figure it out. So it's a really good thing to have in place, and it's a really good thing to think about. So on that note, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to go through is sort of what we do monthly. All right, again, this is really not all-inclusive. Y'all, I know y'all do a whole lot more than what I have on this PowerPoint. So the first thing we're going to talk about is bank reconciliations. And you had the auditor talk to you earlier. I hit buttons, sorry. About being prepared for your audit. You don't know how many times I've heard an auditor say, we've gotten there, and they hadn't even done bank recs yet. Maybe for 6 months worth. All right? That's not a good thing at all. Because first of all, the law says you only have 30 days to examine your bank statement for any fraudulent activity and report it to the bank. Okay? So you need to keep that 30 days in mind. You should have your bank rec done within 30 days. Okay? 30 days at the end of the month, have your bank rec done. It's not that hard. You know, if you stay caught up and you do it every month in a timely manner, then I promise you at the end of the year, that's the last thing you're going to worry about with auditors. That's going to be one of those things Diane said you give quickly because they're done, right? So make sure you get your bank recs done in a timely manner, all right? The other thing you need to remember is to make sure that you look at all of those outstanding checks. So if a check is outstanding for more than 6 months, you need to be researching it. Give them a call if you know who it is. Hey, did you get that check? You know, did they say, no, I can't find it? We'll reissue it. Okay? You need to be doing that research. You need to stay on top of those outstanding checks. Your bank rec shouldn't be 3 pages of outstanding checks, you know, that are over 6 months old. And I've seen it. You know, I've been guilty of it. So, seen it. The other thing, and it doesn't say that here, is the outstanding deposits. Outstanding deposits, people tend to sort of not look at those too much because they think, oh, well, you know, we just made a deposit on the 30th, whatever, it didn't go in until the next month. Well, in the school board system, I always did the bank recs for my schools. We had a segregation of duties issues, so that was one thing I took over to help with that. One time, there was several outstanding deposits on a bank statement. I'm thinking, that's weird, but maybe, you know, it was Christmas break, all that, maybe. Surely she didn't leave them in over the Christmas break at school, but you never know, maybe so. So I called the bank and I said, send me the January's bank statement so I can see if those deposits went in. They hadn't. So then I'm starting to question, where's the money? We get to look and we find some of it in somebody's car. You know, some of it we never found because some of it disappeared over the break. So outstanding deposits are just as important as outstanding checks. So be sure and pay attention to both of those. Then whoever is preparing the bank reconciliation, you need to make sure you sign it and date it, okay? Then it needs to be reviewed by someone other than you, okay? So someone above you, it don't have to be, well, I guess it really doesn't have to be above you, just someone other than you, someone other than the person who handles cash. Like in my case, I have my superintendent would have reviewed it, and then they need to also sign it and initial and date it, okay? Saying they reviewed it. All right, and that's going to be one of those AUPs that they look at when they come into to do your audit. So make sure you get that done. All right. The other thing you need to do monthly is pay attention to your security pledge. And I think that when they alluded to this earlier, you know, the bank only insures it for so much. I think $250,000 at FDIC. Anything over that, you have to have securities pledged against that. It's your responsibility to make sure. It's not the bank's responsibility. Even though we like to leave it up to the bank, it's not the bank. If the auditors come in and you didn't have the right securities pledge, the bank's not going to get wrote up. Okay? The bank is not going to get a finding. You are. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you have securities pledged against your money. All right? Board meetings. We all know we need to have a board meeting held monthly. Written public notice. And I'll list all these laws, but please don't ever ask me what they... No, I did read them. But basically, 24 hours notice. You have to give 24 hours notice before your board meeting. And it cannot include weekends or holidays. Okay? So we also have to make sure that in all our board meetings that we're following the open meeting law. Okay? And again, I've referenced a lot of these laws and stuff you can look up. But, the open meeting law, you have to make sure you give the notice of the meeting. Your agenda has to be posted. Your agenda has to have certain, it has to be, real clear on what you're doing. You can't be real vague on your agenda. You got to make sure you have a quorum. You got to make sure you allow public participation in your board meetings. Everybody does that a little different. Some people do it after every agenda item. Some people have people sign in. It's just everybody has their own policies, but you need to have a policy that needs to be posted in your meeting room. And then so forth, with the voting, the written minutes and stuff like that. So just make sure you're following the open meeting laws. Yes, question?
This goes back to a question on the bank reconciliations. This individual said, I thought someone was supposed to review it before I do the reconciliation to make sure that I don't change the statement in any way.
Okay, so good. The best practices is that someone else should be opening the bank statement and just sort of, you can be a brief review, looking for anything unusual. So normally the person who does the bank statement shouldn't be the one that opens it. That does a bank reconciliation. So yes, it is good best practices to have someone else open the bank statement. Someone that would understand if they saw something really weird, because they're not going to sit there and go through every little thing, but you want them to look at it and look through the checks and look through, anything weird. So after your board meeting, you got to make sure you publish your minutes, any ordinances, resolutions, budgets, any other official documents in your official journal. Okay. So whichever, you don't have to publish in every newspaper in the area, just whichever one is your official journal. And if you have a website, it should also be posted on that website. Okay. So board reports. So this is the one that's sort of hard sometimes for people to, I don't know how many times I've heard, just don't have time, it's so hard. Yeah, it is. I agree. I was one of those people. But I can't tell you how important it is. Your board needs to be involved. Okay? You need to give them reports every month. Do you have to stand up there like you're doing your budget and have a 20-minute conversation? No. But they need to have their reports, okay? They need to have the budget to actual for the general fund, special revenue funds, and any other large funds. You need to give it to them monthly, okay? It needs to be, I think we talk about it on the agenda, I'm not sure. This is some other recommendations, maybe a balance sheet, statement of revenue, expenditures, listing of accounts payables, listing of customer accounts receivables, just whatever fits your organization. But the point is to keep them informed. So that means you need to be doing everything to get it ready every month. If I give them something and I haven't reconciled my bank statements, I haven't posted any journal entries, I haven't recorded my deposits, that's crap. That's not gonna do them any good. So you have to stay on top of your job, stay on top of the accounting work, and then give them the information. And again, just present it to them. If they have any questions, they'll ask. You don't have to go over every line. It doesn't have to be a big old presentation. Okay? And again, it says the mayor or clerk, but basically anybody that does financials, present the monthly financial statements and budget comparisons to the board, including any warning or corrective remedial actions. And this is what Diane talked about earlier. When you have an audit finding, you should have some kind of remedial action plan, okay? You need a plan. And every month, like she said, every month, you need to present that plan to the board and let them know where you are in that plan. So me just giving them a plan every month saying, I'm gonna fix it, but I ain't done nothing. I don't think that's what they want. They wanna know, what have you done to fix this? And then once you fix it and you've resolved it, then that's great. That's what you get to tell them. And then you don't have to talk about it again. As long as it don't come up again on your audit the next time. Okay, and that's what it talks about here. It's a written report of the status of resolving audit findings, because you don't want to be on that 3-strike list, okay? It's not a fun list to be on, and you don't want to be on it. So payroll, timesheets. And I'm going to stress this a lot because just the short time I've been in investigative auditing, this has come up. You know, people are not doing timesheets. They're just working when they want to work. Or if they work all the time, they don't do timesheets. When we go in there and look at something, and we may have had a complaint, because in my department, we come in when we have a complaint. We may come in and look at something. We may have a complaint about so-and-so's never there. Oh, they love to say that one. So-and-so's never there. You know, the town is never open. You hear that one a lot. So if I go in there and I'm going to go look to see if so-and-so is there, the first thing I'm going to ask for is timesheets. I don't do timesheets. I'm the only person here. Why am I doing timesheets? Well, I still got to do timesheets, okay? So timesheets are very important, and you should be recording when they got there, when they left, any lunch breaks, stuff like that. One of the big reasons timesheets are important is because anytime that you accrue leave, you must document that you worked or you didn't work for leave purposes, okay? So, and I'm going to take, and I'm sorry if I refer to the school board a lot because that's just what I know. Teachers are salaried, exempt employees, right? So technically, they don't really need a timesheet, but they accrue leave. So because they accrue leave, they have to either certify they worked when they were supposed to work, or certify they didn't, so that they took a sick day or whatever. So even though they don't have to have the traditional timesheets, they're not required, they still have, because they accrue leave, they still have to have something that says, I was there, or I was not there, and I want to take my sick time, okay? More important in a school system, and this is where I think a lot of us school systems fail, is for support. Because support is also paid salary, but they're not exempt from the overtime laws. So where that could get you in trouble is with if you ever have a wage audit by the IRS and you don't have any kind of timesheets or anything for those people. Because as a support employee, all I gotta do is make a complaint, and then they're gonna come in and they're gonna say, I say, I've been working 50 hours a week and they're not paying me overtime. So they're gonna come in and they're gonna say, okay, well, let me see your timesheets. I don't have any timesheets. Okay, we're taking her word for it. She was working 50 hours a week, and guess what? Not only do you have to pay her that, but you gotta pay her penalties and interest and all the other stuff. And it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars for a school system. So it's very important to make sure that you have timesheets. All right? Each pay period. So most of you, I mean, not everybody, because some of y'all I know are from small, maybe one-man shows, but a lot of you have payroll departments. So every time payroll's ran, someone else, preferably like if you have a payroll department, your director of finance or someone, should be reviewing those payroll reports. Okay, we're going to look for some weird stuff. We're going to look for anything different from one time to the next. and there's different reports your system can run. We're going to look for new employees. We're going to look for the people we know left to see if they're on that list. One time we paid somebody, 2 months, and they weren't, they'd quit 2 months ago. We just kept paying them, and it's really hard to get that back. Very hard to get back. No, it happens. Things happen. You overlook some things, it happens. But doing something like this really helps. It helps to see if your payroll person might decide to give herself a raise that month. If you see that she made more this month than she made last month, that might be something you want to look into and find out why. Or, her best friend got more money, whatever. It's just a way, you're not going to catch everything every time, but you're going to look at some of this, and some of it's going to jump out at you. But probably more importantly, that payroll person knows you're looking at this every month. Okay? So sometimes perception is better than what you're actually going to see. Someone knows that you're watching. And then also you need to transmit all your state and federal payroll taxes after each payroll run or whenever it's appropriate for your situation. Accounts receivable. All right. So this is another thing that we've seen a lot of. And this is something I've expanded my knowledge on a little bit, because with a school system, we tend not to record accounts receivable until the end of the year. We just don't. It's what we do. Right or wrong, I know Diane was probably different. She probably recorded it every month. But it's really important for some of y'all to really pay attention to your accounts receivable monthly, okay? So you need to make sure you balance the general ledger to the detailed account receivable listing. So if my accounts receivable says somebody owes me $10,000, I should know that Jane Smith owes me $5 and Tom owes me the other $5. I need to know what that comprises, and that's what you're doing there. This is where we see a lot. Your meter deposits. People who collect water, gas, different things like that. People come in and they give you a deposit to turn their water on, right? So how are you keeping track of that? You got receivables because you owe somebody, not a receivable, that's a payable. Why is that on that list?
It's a liability.
Yeah, it's a liability. I don't even know why that's on there, but we're gonna go over it because it's important. Why you didn't catch that first time? Okay, so somebody comes in and they give you a deposit. So you're gonna record a payable because you owe them that deposit. When they ever leave, 200 years from now, you small towns, you still owe them that deposit back. You got to keep up with that, okay? It's very important. You have to keep that separate, because I have been in some towns where they don't even have enough money in their checking account to cover that payable. It's not money for you to spend. You keep that money separate, okay? So every month, because you have new customers every month, you need to reconcile that, okay? And any other payables you may have also. We just don't have payables on here. You can do the same thing, water systems, for the units of waters you produce. You can reconcile that, okay? So you're gonna look at how many units you build to how many units you produce. They should be close. You're gonna have some spoilage, you're gonna have some leaks, but they should be close. Okay? Again, these are just examples of receivables, payables, but you're going to have your own. Just make sure you just reconcile them every month. All right, quarterly. I tend to talk fast, so I'm trying to slow myself down a little bit. I think I'm doing okay. All right, your payroll reports. We have multiple payroll reports every quarter, okay, that you need to file. Your quarterly wage reports to the Louisiana Department of Labor within 30 days after the end of the quarter being reported. Okay. These used to be so easy. Not so much anymore, because now they want your hourly wages. Oh, that's real fun when you're a school system and you have 3 different pays going into somebody's pay, and they're not paid by the hour, they're paid by, it's just a nightmare. But it is due. They will, if you're not paid, they will assess you penalties and interest. So, and 941s to the Internal Revenue Service. And I'm not going to go in through all that, but Circular E's or the know-all. I mean, that is the Bible for 941s and your IRS tax, your payroll taxes. Your L1s, the Louisiana Department of Revenue. So you're required to hold out taxes for the Louisiana Department of Revenue. And the kicker here is, if you fail to do that, if you fail to withhold or pay, then you can be personally liable for some of these amounts. So you don't really want to mess with withholding. You know, if somebody, hopefully y'all have all that set up in some kind of system where it figures it for you, but just make sure that you're not only withholding them from their paychecks, but that you're submitting them to the proper authorities in a timely manner. Because, I mean, that's just, to me, I always look at that, I look at that in my personal life, that's just a ridiculous penalty or interest I don't want to do. You know, because it's not that hard, get it done in a timely manner, or otherwise you're wasting money. And in this case, you're wasting taxpayers' money. All right, and each L1 covers a quarter, and it must be filed on the last day of the month following the close of the quarter, unless you're a semi-monthly. And there's another one. All right. So debt service. A lot of people have their debt service things due quarterly, so that's why I put it here. Yours may be due at a different time, maybe annually or monthly, but I cannot tell you, like, this needs to be on your list just in case you ever leave, because one time I just took over as Director of Finance, and I gave my accounts payable clerk the bills, which we were old school. We still wrote out checks for everything. We didn't ACH things. We were very old school. She saw they weren't due till, I don't know, 3 weeks down the road, so she stuck them on her desk. I get a call the day before they're due saying, Tammy, what's up? I normally have your payment by now. You know, what's going on? So I'll go to my accounts payable clerk. She says, oh, I forgot. I set them over here and I forgot. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? I was new. I didn't know what to do. Crazy. So I call him back. I said, what are you doing? You're going to have to overnight it to me. I said, I've been working in Oberlin. We don't overnight. We don't even have overnight. I had to drive to Lake Charles because there is no overnight in Oberlin. It's not even possible. So I had to get in my car, drive to Lake Charles, an hour down the road, so that I could overnight these payments because she forgot to mail them. So even though so from then on, and I'm gonna, I give them to her, I say, okay, pay them now. I know it's 3 weeks early, pay them now. And then I would check. Because they're that important. You do not want to be late on these. Do not. If for some reason you do not have enough money to make your debt, then you have to let several people know. You have to let Louisiana legislative auditors know, and you also have to let the chief notify the SBC in writing. Okay? Anytime that you don't have enough money, or you know you're not going to have enough money. So don't wait till that day before to let us know. You know you're not going to have enough money. Go ahead. You're supposed to notify everybody. Debt service tax, the millages for that. This is another lesson. Had to learn. So how many of y'all adjust your millage, your millages for your debt service tax every year? Okay. You should be doing that. So you're only supposed to collect what you need to pay your debt service the next year. Oh shoot, what the heck did I do? So
13.
this is what I do to kill time. So I don't get fussed at for getting through early. So when as you all know, your property values change. They change all the time. So if you have the same millage rate every year, it doesn't mean you're going to collect the same every year. You may collect more or less. So it's really important to pay attention to that. I have a spreadsheet. I keep it all on a spreadsheet for every debt service millage I have. I know how much I have in the balance. I know how much my principal and interest will be for the next year. And when it comes time to adopt our ad valorem taxes, I look at that spreadsheet and I say, okay, where am I? Do I need more money? Do I need less money? And it's really, really important to do that the closer you get to the end of that bond payment, because you're supposed to sort of, zero out. You're not supposed to collect more. That's dedicated to that bond. So you can't collect it and go do something else with it. You can't collect it and go put it in your capital project, son. It happened once. You can't do that. All right. So very important that every time you go to do your ad valorem taxes that you're really paying attention to, your balance in that debt service. Yes.
I just want to add there that we require that they break down the debt service and send that in to Joanne Garrison, our debt review officer.
The actual amounts that are in there, or
The amounts that are left,
And-
that they don't just, that doesn't happen.
okay. See, I didn't even know that. I don't know that I've ever done that.
If anybody, I guess I would just want to say, if anybody has any questions
Right.
about debt service and exactly what you're talking
Right.
about, they need to talk
To Joanne Garrison. So yeah, I have a link on here in a second that talks about ad valorem taxes. Miss Joanne Garrison is our person in our office that takes care of ad valorem taxes, and she is amazing. She could answer any of your questions. She also does workshops every year. If you have not had a chance to attend one of those workshops, I highly recommend it. It's very, very, very useful information. Yes.
On the debt service payment, some companies charge more for like transaction fees or banking fees. How is that like span? Like we have one that charges $1,000 and one charges $200.
Like, why is it different?
Yeah, what's so large?
So the question is, on his debt service fund, he has, when you have people, they charge you a fee for managing these debts, these bonds and stuff, and he's got some that are 1,000, some that are 200. What's the difference? Don't you get to choose that when you issue your bond? Who's gonna manage that? Yeah, there you go. Shop around. I don't know. I don't know why they're different. But I think that to keep them honest, you pick the one that's less. The next time, I bet they'll come down.
They don't tell you the disclosures how much they charge on that, do they?
You may have to ask. Yeah.
Tell them that.
Yeah, I would ask when you go to issue your bonds. I would ask them to find out, because you get to choose who you want to manage that bond, and so I would ask them. They're about their fees and stuff, and so all right. So going on grants. So quarterly, you should be looking at your grants, reviewing their budgets, seeing where you're at, seeing if you need to make a revision. Don't get caught, down the road where you're like, oh wait, I went over in this category, but I need to make a request for a payment, but I don't have any money in that category. So, you need to have that budget first and then spend it. But I'm not going to tell you that always happens. But that's what it should be. You should be having the budget, then spend it. If it's not in the budget, don't spend it. Now, as a finance director, has someone else spent it, and then it wasn't in the budget? Yeah. So that's why it's really important that we review those every quarter, and then have some serious talks with people. Hey, you can't do that. You can't be spending money that's not in the budget. But let's be honest with you, then we got to revise it. So you're going to do that quarterly. For school boards, we have periodic expense reports that must be submitted quarterly to the Department of Education. And then investments. Every quarter, at least every quarter, you can do it more if you want, but at least every quarter you should be providing a list of your investments to your board. Okay? Again, this is all about keeping our boards informed. This is not our money. It's not the board's money, it's the public's money. So we want to meet, like, they said earlier, God dog it. We want to have our hand open. We want everybody to know exactly what we're doing. All right, annual. I feel like annual is like the big one. We have so much stuff that we just do once a year. I think they do that to us, so we'll forget how to do it until the next year. And it's just, it's one of those things. Budgets are one of the things that we have to do annually, our initial budgets. And so we have two different rules for budgets. We have our Local Government Budget Act and our Larson Act. So the entity's chief executive or administrative officer or elected official or school board superintendent is responsible for preparing an annual budget and budget message under the Local Government Budget Act for the general fund and special revenue funds, okay? And then in the Larson Act, the mayor is responsible for the operating budget, which is basically the same as the general fund budget, and also the capital improvements budget. All right, so we just went through a list of who's responsible for preparing the budgets. And technically they are. But they can, tell you to do it. So, but they're still the ones that are responsible, okay? So they need to be involved. They need to be right there with you involved because they are ultimately responsible for the budget. All right, so the budget should be adopted prior to the beginning of the fiscal year, except for school boards. I don't know why we're special. We have till September 15th. Is it a good idea to have it done prior to the beginning of the fiscal year? Absolutely, even if you're a school board. I won't say I've always done it, but it is a good idea. But everybody else, you need to have it done before the fiscal year starts, okay? You're not really supposed to be spending money if you don't have it budgeted. And there are some special rules if you don't. If for some reason you can't get it budgeted, but. So for the Larson Act, you need an ordinance must be passed in an open meeting before the end of the fiscal year. For elected officials, like a sheriff, somebody doesn't have a board, then they just have to have a letter authorizing implementation and they need to sign it. They're not required to have a public meeting. And then school boards, we have to have a resolution passed by September 15th in an open meeting.
They are required to have a public hearing.
Hearing, right. And the public hearing, the sheriff still has to have. They just don't have to adopt it in a public meeting because they don't have, they don't have a board. But they do have to have a hearing on the budget. And then parishes, ordinance, or resolutions passed in an open meeting prior to the 30th day of the new fiscal year. Okay. And then other political subdivisions before the prior to the fiscal year. Okay. So public inspections. So just because you have the budget prepared, you're ready to get it adopted, it's not. You got to back up some. It's not quite that easy. The first thing you have to do is make it available for public inspection. And all that means is you have one ready if somebody comes in and wants to look at it. You have to put a notice in the paper, saying that it's available for public inspection. But it doesn't mean you have to go around showing everybody your budget. It's there if they want to come in. 13 years, I don't think I've ever had anybody come in and look at my budget. Yes, ma'am.
I thought a budget had to be adopted by ordinance in the Larson Act.
So it's only if you don't. The only time it does it is if you have you don't have a board, like a sheriff. They don't an assessor, like an elected official that is not. Yeah, under the mayors and stuff. Yes, they have their aldermen and stuff. They have to adopt it. All right. All right. So public inspections. Make it a public. So the Larson Act says no later than 15 days prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. Again, because you have to have it adopted by the fiscal year. But, it has to be 15 days before you adopt it. So elected officials, pretty much the same. School boards, pretty much the 15-day thing is pretty General, I mean, you need to give them 15 days to inspect it. You need to give them notice and give them 15 days to inspect it before you adopt it. Okay? If your total expenditures are $500,000 or more for the general fund or any special revenue fund, and that's not hard to get to, then your public notice must be given in the official journal. All right. You also have to have a public hearing. So you've given your public notice, for over $500,000. You've advertised. You've made it available for public inspection. Now you have to have a public hearing. So what's a public hearing? Well, basically, again, when I do a public hearing, I don't go over every line, but I do get up, I present it. It's open, open to the public, of course, and normally your board's there. You go over the highlights. You go over things that have changed. You go over significant events. You go over, anything that you think that is important for people to know. Go ahead, go over it. Put it out there. And then you have an opportunity for people to ask questions. Again, I'll tell you this. So again, I was very blessed to be in a parish where, people didn't, I don't want to say question you, but it wasn't a lot of controversy in our parish. And so my very last budget I presented, I always get a little nervous. Believe it or not, I'm very, very, very nervous right now. So I walk in and the room is full. It might have been the one before this, but it was full. I'm like, oh my God, it's a public hearing. I've never had more than 10 people at a public hearing. I mean, this place was full. Like, what is going on? It's like, oh, my superintendent, what is going on? Oh, they're all mad about the mask. And I'm like, oh, good, they're not going to. I'm like, please don't ask a question about the budget. And sure not, no. Single one, I'm like, I did all this, and not a single one of y'all going to ask about my budget. All y'all care about is the mask. So, but it really scared me, but most of the time, it's, you got people asking some good questions sometimes. Your board asks good questions, but it's just really a time for you to take the moment to inform them. So, again, over $500,000, a public hearing must be held prior to September 15th. It's basically no sooner than 10 days after the publication is what you want to remember on this slide. So, once you tell them it's available for inspection, you can't have that public hearing no sooner than 10 days after the publication. You got to give them at least 10 days to come inspect your budget so they can ask some intelligent questions. Okay? And once the public hearing has been held, then the governing authority or elected official must certify completion of the public process as a notice in the official journal. All right, budget amendments. The Budget Amendment Act. Law. Once the governing authority has been notified of a 5% variance, okay, or change in operations upon which the original budget was developed, then you must amend your budget. It may mean 5% expenditures, 5% revenue, just a 5% variance is the general guide.
Isn't it 5% negative?
It is.
5% either way.
Either way, never mind. Jennifer said either way, and that was one thing you said that because recently I saw a finding on an audit report. They had a 5% positive, and they wrote them up for it. I personally have never. Well, I always give myself plenty of cushion, so that would never happen. But like they got a grant or something. They got some additional money, and they hadn't had it. They didn't have it in the budget, and they got wrote up for it.
The reason for that is because you have to appropriate the monies you get. You can't just leave it out there. So that's the reason for that. And it's not a cash flow. It's a real change in revenue and a real change in expenses.
Okay. So she said the reason for that is because you have to appropriate that money. It's not a cash flow. It's a real change in revenue and a real change in expenses. Okay. Did I get that right? All right, sexual harassment training. This has to be done every year. This became a law on January 1st, 2019. It applies to everyone in this room. It applies to all public officials, public employees, doesn't matter. It's everybody. It's your board. It's everybody. So they must take a 1 hour of education on preventing sexual harassment. If you're a supervisor or an agency head, there's an additional hour you have to take, additional class. I think it's another hour. You also have to keep up with who took the trainings. So they can't just take the training and say, yeah, I did it. No, they need to print it out and give it to you.
When this first came out, the supervisor was every other year initially. Did they change that?
Yeah, it's every year. Supervisors, so her question was, it used to be the supervisors were every other year. It is every year the supervisors has to take it, just like your regular sexual harassment. So they need to take them both every year. And again, we need to certify it. We need to print it out. We need to give it to somebody in HR to make sure they're keeping up with it, okay? Because, and I'm gonna show you in a second, there's a report you have to fill out that says, hey, I took them, or this is how many people took them.
Local government doesn't yet have to do the report.
They don't have to do, local government does not have to do the report?
Government does, but you can figure that the legislature
It's gonna happen?
change that.
Okay. So, well, we'll talk about that in a second when I get to it, because I have it on here somewhere. You also have to make sure your sexual harassment policy is posted, if you, either on your website or in your office, somewhere prominently, if you don't have a website.
Okay, so I know that the sexual harassment, I can understand about that training, but what about the training that you have to go through for child abuse or recognizing that? Is that mandatory for everybody, or just because I don't work with children, so I don't understand why?
So the question is the training they have to do for child abuse.
Or you know,
It depends on the law. It depends on what you're doing. If you're working for schools, they have certain training under Title 17. If you're working for the Department of Children and Family Services, there's certain training there. So what she's talking about is the mandatory training in general. But there are certain specific training, for instance, for the child.
I was just wondering, because like I work in central office and I don't come in contact with children.
But the law
Right.
still requires.
Right.
Still requires.
So for school boards, just because you work for the school board, you fall under that law. So whether you work with the children directly or not, okay? All right, well, undoubtedly, this only applies to state agencies, but it's coming. This doesn't apply to us right now. Oh, we do?
Your slides are right.
Oh. So each agency head shall compile an annual report by February 1st of each year containing information from the previous year regarding who took the training, how many sexual harassment complaints, the number of complaints that sexual harassment occurred, discipline action, time it took to resolve, so all this stuff. So this is stuff you're all going to have to be tracking. It's because you don't want to get to the end of the year and say, hey, I don't know any of this. All right? And they are part of the public records.
So even though this is not financial, it is an audit finding?
So is it under the
Statewide
agreed upon procedures?
right
So his
now.
question was, since this is not financial, would this be an audit finding? Well, this falls under your statewide audit procedures. So it's the finding there. It's not a finding there. It's the exception. An exception under your right. It's not a finding, but it is an exception. This does have an example of the report on the LMA's website. Ethics, so our Louisiana Code of Ethics is found in Revised Statute 42-1101. As a best practice, we do recommend that everybody attests to reading that and understanding their ethics. Some of us have to take ethics classes. That's each of you are individual. You'll have to know whether you need an ethics class or not. But bare minimum, you need to make sure your employees we do this every year usually. You can do it at evaluation time or you can do it at the beginning of the year, but you need to make sure they understand there is an ethics policy in your place of business. I'm assuming you're supposed to have an ethics policy, and that they read it, they understand it, and they will abide by it.
Didn't that change this year to only have to do it for new employees?
No, that's cybersecurity training.
So the question was, did that change this year that we only have to do it for new? I'm so glad they're here. Y'all are asking me. I was like, they're not going to ask me questions. I'm not going to know the answers. So the question was, do we only have to do that for new employees? And Diane said, no, that's the cybersecurity training that changed. But she said, no, the ethics still, the wait.
Ethics training is every year.
The ethics training is under the State Board of Ethics. And that's every year. And they do check that, and we do. It's compliance with the law.
Right.
So it's in the compliance.
So the state ethics is under the State Board of Ethics, and it is every year. All right. Yes, ma'am.
My question pertains to both trainings and the time frame that it's the timing of the training that occurs and how long it's good for. We've been having a lot of turnover in our office, and so if most of our people take it in the last quarter of the year, of our calendar year, and if someone leaves in March.
Right. So that is a problem. So that's why it's recommended you go ahead and do it in January, and then you catch the people that come in after January, because it's only good for the calendar year, right? I mean, it's a calendar year. But if you got someone that leaves in March and they hadn't taken it yet, that could be something that.
They tend to take it in the last quarter.
Right. I would change that. Would make them take it earlier, in the first quarter, and then just catch your new hires as they come in. So, I mean, that's my recommendation.
So all the employees are going to hate me next year.
Yeah, because they're going to take it in the last quarter and the first quarter. Yeah, just tell them to get it over with. Just get it over with. Because I'm telling you, the one that's walking out in March and you tell him he's got to take it, he's not going to do it. So you don't want to be in that situation. So performance evaluations, you should be doing performance evaluations. I know this is sort of hard sometimes to get done in some of our agencies, but a performance evaluation should be done annually. And it's a good time to catch some of these housekeeping stuff that we have to do also. But it's a good time to give them feedback. Sometimes I feel like I don't get enough feedback from my children. So, sometimes I don't know what kind of mother I am because they don't really tell me, and unless they're mad at me. And I feel like I need more feedback than that. So as a boss, don't be that one that only tells them how they're doing when you're mad at them. So if you're that kind of boss that doesn't give good feedback all the time, this is a perfect opportunity to give some of that, not only what I need to do better, but give me some positive feedback too. So annual performance evaluations are a really good thing. And at this time, they can go ahead and sign their annual certification form, acknowledging that they agree to apply to all their policies and procedures. It's a really good time, like I said, to do your housekeeping things. Okay, ad valorem taxes. Oh, I thought I was gonna be like short.
You have 5 minutes.
I know. I mean, I thought I was gonna. Yeah, I'm proud of myself. Okay. All right, ad valorem taxes. Ad valorem taxes, I don't have a whole lot on here. Just a reminder that you have to adopt your ad valorem taxes every year. The reason I didn't put a lot on here is because we got some great resources. And like she said, Joanne Garrison is wonderful. And the ad valorem, the millage workshops they do are great. And I would really recommend you do that every year because things change. I mean, if you don't think they change, pay attention to ad valorem laws because they change constantly. So you really need to get that in because it tells you when you got to advertise, when you can roll forward, all this stuff. I mean, she goes over everything. It's a wonderful thing. But there are some resources on this if you don't get the opportunity to go. There's some workshop material on here.
And there's a constitutional amendment that'll change it again.
So yes. So there's a constitutional amendment that if it passes, will change it again. Like I said, this is probably in my career, it's one of the areas I've seen change the most is ad valorem taxes. So to say, that's why I'm not going over this, because I don't know. So I would have had to learn it before coming here, because it really does change constantly. All right, so audits. I'm not going to touch on this much because they had the whole class on this. This is something you have to do annually. It is the state law that you provide your books to your auditors. You think that's crazy, but we've got people who won't do it. Like, they won't give their books to the auditors. Well, then they get a call from us. So, you know, it's a serious penalty or crime not to provide your books to your auditor. All right, Louisiana. They talked about the Louisiana compliance questionnaire. You need to have that done. I'm not going to go through all this because they talked about a lot of this. Just some miscellaneous things, your grant budgets, your W-2s. They're so fun. Due January 31st to employees, IRS, and Department of Revenue. 1095s for now are still, as far as I know, are still. This is your health insurance for form. Some of your health insurances actually do it for you, but if you're with OGB, they do not. Go figure. So you have to do it. You have to provide them to your employers. 1099s. So we were discussing a little bit earlier, difference between an employee and a contract person. You need to know that. If you don't, you need to go to the IRS website and look it up. But basically, if you tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, they're an employer. They're not a contractor. Okay, you can't give them, you should be treating them with a payroll, not a 1099. Okay, give them a W-2, not a 1099. But you have 1099 people. You're going to have them. School boards, the worst thing when I got there, they weren't given officials. People come in, they referee, they're officials. They didn't give them 1099s. I'm like, you got to give them 1099s, people. So we got that fixed. They're due, but they're. So this is my challenge to you. Prepare your own task list. Okay? Prepare detailed directions for performing each task. Leave directions for the person that's coming in behind you. Or let's just say you have to be out 6 weeks for surgery. You can't go 6 weeks without doing your job. Somebody needs to know what the heck's going on. Don't get caught unprepared. Don't be that person that gets a job and suddenly leaves when they didn't expect to. Because it puts somebody else in a bind. And there's my contact information, and that's my grandbabies. I didn't put a picture of myself because they're more important than anybody else in the world. They are. So if you have any questions, I would be more than glad to answer them. You can email me. Again, I'm in the investigative department, but if I don't know the answer, Jennifer's just right across the thing from me, and I could go ask her, or Diane. All right?
10-minute break.
Thank y'all. We have a 10-minute break.